Some civilizations built their legacy on palaces and walls. This one built it on mountains. Peaks carved like temples. Cliffs split with geometric precision. Valleys guarded by spirits older than written history. And hidden among them are places so strange that even science steps back. Today, we're going into the 30 mountains that define a world few travelers ever see. Welcome to the China you won't find in any guidebook. Mount Fanjing is unlike anything else in China. Its signature formation, the golden peak of red clouds, is a stone tower split clean down the middle. The summit rises more than 2,300 meters above sea level, yet the crack between its twin spires is only about 27 meters wide. What stands here today is the exposed floor of an ancient ocean, forged more than 1.4 billion years ago and lifted skyward by tectonic force. Nature built the tower, but it was the Ming-era Tiantai monks who turned it into something sacred. They believed the split peak mirrored the line between the earthly world and enlightenment, so they began a climb no one should survive. Everything for the two cliff temples had to be carried up by hand. Local accounts describe men tying hemp ropes around their waists, hauling timber and stone through storms, inching upward along ledges, no wider than a boot print. Step by step, they carved more than 8,000 stairs, creating what many call China's steepest pilgrimage route. The mountain's ecosystem only deepens the mystery. Clouds form and dissolve in minutes. The rare gray snub-nosed monkey survives here, clinging to an isolated climate pocket that exists nowhere else. At the summit, a narrow stone bridge stitches the two halves together, linking the Buddhist temple to the Maitreya temple. Stand there long enough, and the wind funnels through the split like a living thing, as if the mountain is exhaling its history. Jianglang's strangeness hits you the moment you reach its base. Three vertical sandstone walls rise more than 360 meters, aligned so precisely that early surveys questioned whether natural erosion could produce such order. The layers inside each pillar match almost perfectly, a clue pointing to a single ancient fracture that tore one giant ridge into three surviving slabs. The most revealing place is the passage between them. It is a deep, narrow corridor where daylight slips in for only a few minutes. You can read the mountain's history in the exposed cut, like a record of the moment the crust gave way. Danxia's red landscape is not simply colored rock. It is the exposed skin of a prehistoric basin, formed as layers of iron-rich sandstone compressed and baked for tens of millions of years until they hardened into deep crimson bands. What unsettles many visitors is the shape of the formations. Ridges curve like muscle, towers swell like limbs, and entire slopes resemble parts of the human body with a precision that feels intentional. Geologists point to uneven oxidation and erosion as the cause, yet the mimicry is so uncanny that local folklore insists the land once held living giants. Gansu Mingsha is known today for its strange, resonating dunes, but the desert carries stories far older than any scientific explanation. Locals tell of an ancient battle fought here. A general and his soldiers clashed with their enemies until a violent gust buried the entire battlefield beneath sand. The warriors were said to continue fighting in the darkness below, and the low rumble heard on windy days was believed to be their voices rising through the dunes. The real cause is simpler. When the wind drives the sand, or when someone slides down the slope, countless grains of quartz rub and charge against one another. The vibration rolls through the dune like a drumbeat. Mingsha is also the guardian of Crescent Lake, a small, crescent-shaped oasis that has survived for centuries. One tale from the Western Han speaks of General Li Guang, whose thirsty troops collapsed here on their return from the western frontier. He struck his sword into the dune, and water surged out, forming the lake that still sits at the foot of the echoing sands. Henan Jigong gets its name from a massive rock shaped uncannily like a standing rooster. From a distance, the silhouette is unmistakable: crest, beak, and chest, all carved by natural wind cutting over thousands of years. In northern folklore, a rooster at the gate wards off evil spirits, so villagers long treated this peak as a natural guardian. Travelers passing through would leave offerings at its base, believing the mountain watched the crossroads between the Central Plains and the northern frontier. Around the main peak, steep ridges catch strong seasonal winds that create sudden temperature drops and fast-moving fog. These shifts give Jigong its reputation for appearing and disappearing, as if the stone guardian decides when to reveal itself. Mount Hua has a way of testing you before you ever touch its cliffs. Five jagged peaks rise like granite fortresses, a landscape that earned its title as the most dangerous place under heaven. The ascent begins through ancient stairways carved so tightly your shoulders scrape the stone. Some sections tilt nearly vertical, the heavenly ladders created by monks who believed enlightenment waited only for those willing to climb where others turned back. But the mountain reveals its true character on the eastern cliff. Here, The plank walk stretches across a sheer wall of granite. Narrow wooden boards, barely the width of a boot, are bolted into a face that drops into a lightless gulf. Modern travelers come for thrill and fear. The ancient Taoists came for purpose. Centuries ago, hermits and alchemists retreated into these cliffs, searching for elixirs of longevity and rare herbs that only grow in extreme isolation. Records from the Tang and Song dynasties speak of practitioners who lived in caves suspended above nothing, convinced that wisdom waited at the razor edge between safety and death. The plank walk was originally a supply route, a lifeline to those monks who refused to descend. Some of the original iron bolts still remain, hammered into the stone centuries ago. When the wind rises through the chasm, it strikes with a force that shakes the boards and turns every step into a question. The question is no longer whether the trail is dangerous. It is whether you will keep walking when the earth disappears beneath your feet. From the valley floor, a massive opening cuts through the ridge, a hollow so tall it could swallow a skyscraper. Local chronicles say the arch appeared in the year 263 after a violent collapse shook the mountainside for days. Ever since, people have called it the Gate of Heaven. The ascent feels like entering a different world. The road coils upward through 99 tight serpent curves, each one locking closer to the mountain's spine. At the end of the road, you step into an elevator carved inside the rock. The noise of the valley fades, and when the doors open, the sky is suddenly level with your feet. Most visitors come for the glass skywalk. A clear path bolts itself to a sheer wall, leaving only air between you and the forest more than 4,000 feet below. Through the glass, you can see fine fractures in the stone, ancient ripple lines frozen since the mountain first rose from the earth. Modern engineering keeps you safe, yet every instinct reminds you how unnatural it feels. To stand here. For travelers, Tianmen is an attraction. For the people who grew up around it, it is a threshold. Many believe the Gate of Heaven is where the world of mortals brushes against realms unseen. Whether you accept the legend or not, standing inside that giant opening feels like standing inside the aftermath of a forgotten event, a natural explosion, frozen in time. Hebei leaving Tianmen. The journey takes us to a place of complete contrast. Most peaks in northern China are grey, but Baishi is resplendent with its pure white marble cliffs. These cliffs rise more than 2,000 meters, looking like ancient bones exposed against the sky. The glass walkway that clings to the edge of the mountain is a recent construction. Walking on it, on a clear day, the mountain seems to disappear beneath your feet, revealing a maze of pale mountain ranges stretching to the horizon. What makes Baishi special is not just the color of the stone, but the marble structure that is rare in northern China. Millions of years of compression create layers of pure white that are little weathered, a place so quiet that you can hear the wind hitting the glass. Just a few hundred kilometers further, the landscape changes completely. Langya rises from the jungle with 5 stone pillars as sharp as wolf tongues. Geology explains that this is Danxia, eroded vertically by wind and water, but Langya is not remembered for its geology. The 5 stone pillars have become iconic since 5 Chinese soldiers during the war against Japan were cornered at the last stone spur. With no way out, they chose to jump into a 400-meter deep abyss rather than surrender. The story goes beyond the monument. It shapes the way people view the mountain. Climb Langya today, and you don't just see the landscape, you stand on the very boundary they stood on. As the journey enters Sichuan, the colors change. Guangwu has no strange shapes or hanging cliffs. It attracts attention with a phenomenon that makes the entire mountain seem to be on fire. In late autumn, more than 70% of the forest turns red and orange, creating a sea of fire effect that covers the karst valleys hundreds of meters deep. An interesting fact is that the temperature in Guangwu changes with each elevation level, causing the leaves to change color layer by layer, creating an extremely rare natural gradient effect. Deep ravines retain the cold, while rocky ledges catch the sun, so that two opposite mountain slopes can have completely different colors. A mountain transformed into a living painting. Fujian going further southeast, the scenery turns to another chapter. Wuyi is not tinged with red like Guangwu, but is vertical like a giant wall, guarding both sides of the more than 60-kilometer-long Jiuhua River. But the attraction is not on the ground, but above. More than 2,000 years ago, the ancient Baiyu people hung coffins on the cliffs, some at a height of 40 meters, in positions with no climbing path, no support. To this day, no one has been able to explain how they got them up there, or why the dead had to lie in the open air. As you drift along the river on a bamboo raft, those coffins appear in the rock holes like traces of a lost culture. Not creepy, just quiet and mysterious, like a message left for those patient enough to look up. Maijishan rises alone from the forest, a reddish pillar more than 160 meters tall, pierced by hundreds of cave openings. From afar, it looks like a colossal hive, shaped by something other than human hands. Only when you step closer do you realize those openings hold more than 7,000 Buddhist statues, stacked along the cliff, in rows that seem to watch every movement. The scale is astonishing, but the real mystery is how it was created. 16 centuries ago, sculptors and monks hauled tools up this vertical wall with only hemp ropes for support. They carved chambers directly into the cliff, sometimes spending months suspended above the forest. Many of the walkways visitors use today grew from those early footholds, later expanded into wooden platforms anchored deep into the stone. That the structure survived centuries of earthquakes in Gansu adds another layer of intrigue. Inside the caves, delicate murals cover the walls. Outside, wooden corridors cling to the rock like threads spun around the mountain. Wind moves through the hollows with a low, resonant hum, giving the entire structure an almost breathing presence. Pilgrims long believed Maijishan held concentrated spiritual energy. Geologists note that the mountain's stone is soft enough to carve yet strong enough to support entire galleries. The combination of material, devotion, and impossible placement gives the site an otherworldly quality. Standing on one of the suspended walkways, with the forest far below and the carved faces surrounding you, Maijishan feels less like a monument and more like a message lifted toward the sky by hands that trusted faith over gravity. Mount Wudang feels different from the moment you step onto its ancient stone paths. The forest is dense, the air unusually still, and the temples tucked along the ridges seem arranged with a precision that follows some forgotten cosmic rule. This is the birthplace of Taiji, the mountain where Taoist sages believed heaven and earth exchange their breath. Yet the greatest mystery sits at the very summit. The Golden Hall, a sanctuary forged from nearly 20 tons of gilded bronze in the year 1416. Every plate, beam, and ornament was cast in Beijing, then transported across rivers and mountains for more than 700 kilometers before being assembled at the peak. For 6 centuries, it has stood in a place few structures could survive. Wudang's summit attracts storms. Lightning strikes are frequent and fierce. Yet instead of destroying the hall, they have preserved it. The gilded bronze remains polished and unscarred, as if each strike cleans rather than burns. Historical records mention hidden conductive channels built beneath the metal panels, guiding electric surges safely into the rock. Scholars still debate how precise this system truly was, and whether the artisans understood the science or relied on intuition passed down through ritual knowledge. Climb early enough and you will see the hall glow in the first light, a warm gold against the shifting clouds. When the wind rises, a faint metallic vibration hums through the structure, almost like the echo of a ceremony carried through time. Wudang does not reveal its mysteries quickly, but standing beside the Golden Hall, with storm clouds gathering beyond the peaks, you sense why generations believed this mountain marked a place where the natural and the divine briefly touch. Arriving at Jiuhua often speak first of the silence, a silence shaped by more than a millennium of devotion to Ksitigarbha, the bodhisattva of the underworld. Deep inside its temples lie preserved bodies of monks who meditated until death, their skin and features intact despite passing centuries. The mountain rises over 1,300 meters, yet most visitors climb not for the view, but to understand how these incorrupt remains were created. Some attribute it to rare minerals in the soil. Others believe the monks achieved a state beyond ordinary decay. Jiuhua leaves the question deliberately open. At Emei's Golden Summit, travelers often stop mid-step when the light shifts. A ring of rainbow color appears around their shadow, floating on the clouds below. Locals call it Buddha's halo. Scientists describe it as backscattered sunlight in high-altitude mist, yet the timing feels too precise to be coincidence. Emei rises more than 3,000 meters, tall enough to catch atmospheric layers that rarely meet. That collision creates the brief window where halos form. Monks see it as a sign of clarity. Climbers see it as a reason to linger at the edge a little longer, waiting for the mountain to acknowledge them. The plateau of Jinfo looks simple from afar, a flat-topped giant painted with pine. But its real story lies underneath. More than 200 karst caves run through the massif, many still unmapped. Explorers have found chambers dripping with calcite formations that resemble frozen waterfalls and passages where underground rivers disappear into darkness. Jinfo stands above 2,200 meters but behaves like an inverted world, its secrets facing inward rather than up. Locals say the mountain breathes through its cave mouths, pulling mist in and pushing cold air out, a rhythm no one has fully charted. Luofu has been a Taoist retreat for almost 2,000 years. Wandering through its valleys, you find remnants of old alchemy labs, places where sages once searched for elixirs using rare minerals gathered from the surrounding peaks. The mountain's humid climate and layered ridges create pockets of medicinal herbs found nowhere else in Guangdong, which fueled centuries of experiments. Even today, some practitioners still come here to live in isolation, following recipes recorded in bamboo scrolls. Luofu does not flaunt its mysteries. It keeps them tucked between steaming forests and quiet stone paths. Jiangxi granite pillars dominate Sanqingshan, rising like coiled serpents above the clouds. The tallest reach more than 1,800 meters and bear names inspired by the shapes they resemble. For Taoists, this mountain served as a natural laboratory. The strange rock columns trap mist in narrow channels, creating perfect conditions for gathering dew used in early alchemy rituals. Travelers who weave through its suspended walkways feel the terrain change every few steps, from sharp ridges to hidden basins that fill with fog. Sanqingshan feels sculpted rather than eroded, a place where the stone itself appears to shift roles in the story. Jiangxi Mingyue, the bright moon, is known for its natural hot springs scattered across a high ridge system. The water carries unusual mineral compositions, feeding moss forests that glow an emerald green even in winter. The mountain's circular basin traps moonlight on clear nights, creating reflections so sharp that locals claim you can read by them. Travelers come for the springs, but many stay for the quiet way Mingyue changes after dusk, when steam lifts from the pools and the entire ridge feels suspended between night and mourning. Dot the slopes of Zhongnan, a range long associated with reclusion and spiritual pursuit. For centuries, scholars, poets, and monks vanished into these valleys, returning decades later with writings that shaped Chinese philosophy. Even today, modern practitioners still live in remote huts along the ridgelines, relying on mountain springs and meditation for survival. The range stretches over 100 kilometers, its deep ravines creating natural barriers that keep the outside world distant. Zhongnan is not a place people visit casually. It is a place they disappear into, seeking something they rarely speak about when they return. The first sight of Mount Gongga is disarming. The peak rises more than 7,500 meters, a perfect white pyramid towering above forests, glaciers, and drifting seas of cloud. Locals call it the King of Sichuan's mountains, and the title is not poetic exaggeration. Gongga dominates its surroundings, the way a storm dominates the sky. But beauty here is a trap. Climbers who approach the massif quickly realize why its fatality rate has surpassed that of Everest. The mountain is ringed with steep ice walls that collapse without warning. Storms roll in within minutes, turning clear skies into blizzards thick enough to erase entire ridgelines. Avalanches hit with no pattern, no rhythm. Even seasoned teams have been forced back by winds strong enough to tear tents off the glacier. What makes the mountain even more surreal is the world at its base. Subtropical forests press against the lower slopes, where orchids and mosses thrive in warm valleys fed by glacial melt. A few hundred meters higher, crystalline lakes mirror the cathedral-like walls of ice. Red boulders, rich in iron, scatter the ridges like ancient markers. Hot springs bubble from fault lines, their mineral water used for healing by local Tibetan communities. And above it all, rare animals move through the landscape as if it belongs solely to them. Snow leopards slipping across rock, blue sheep grazing on impossible ledges, golden monkeys haunting the tree line. Everything about Gongga is contradiction. Life flourishes in its shadow, yet death waits at its heights. The mountain rises from jungle to glacier in a single sweep, a vertical world compressed into one colossal wall of stone and ice. Standing at its base, you understand why climbers use only one word to describe Gongga: respect. Qinghai pilgrims say you do not climb Amne Machin, you circle it. The mountain is the protector deity of the Amdo Tibetans, rising more than 6,200 meters and wrapped in glaciers that shine with a bluish glow. Each year, thousands begin the Kora Trek, a journey that can take several weeks as they walk more than 100 kilometers around the massif. The weather turns instantly, snowstorms hitting without warning, yet the devotion never wavers. Prayer flags line the ridges, snapping in the wind like messages carried straight into the sky. Amne Machin is less a summit and more a living shrine. Sichuan further south, four peaks rise in perfect formation, earning the name the Four Sisters. The tallest stands above 6,000 meters, drawing technical climbers from around the world. The locals say each peak has its own temperament: gentle, distant, proud, and cold. Alpine meadows stretch at their feet, while vertical granite walls guard the upper slopes. Golden snub-nosed monkeys roam the valleys, and glaciers cling to the ridgelines. Siguniang offers everything a mountaineer desires and everything that humbles them: beauty and difficulty braided into a single skyline. Sichuan Xianuoduoji rises sharply above the Yarding valleys, its ridgelines carved into clean geometric planes that look almost designed. Standing a little over 5,800 meters, it forms one of the three sacred peaks worshipped for centuries by Tibetan communities. Pilgrims describe Xianuoduoji as the protector, the mountain whose reflection in Milk Lake and Five-Color Lake is believed to cleanse one's intentions before a Kora. The air here is unusually clear, so still that voices seem to travel farther than they should. Surrounding forests shelter blue sheep, marmots, and rare birds that thrive in the high-altitude silence. Hunan enter Wulingyuan, and the world turns vertical. More than 3,000 sandstone pillars rise from the forest floor, some reaching 200 meters, each shaped by centuries of erosion that carved them into thin, towering spires. Mist curls between the columns every morning, making the landscape look suspended between earth and sky. These formations inspired the floating mountains in the film Avatar, but Wulingyuan needs no comparison. Bridges, caves, and hanging forests weave through the maze, creating a terrain that feels both alien and ancient, a geological labyrinth sculpted by patience rather than force. The Qilian Range is where deserts collide with glaciers. Snow peaks more than 5,000 meters tall, rise abruptly from grasslands where wild horses still roam. Below the ice lies a network of mineral-rich slopes, colored with streaks of red, green, and ochre. Ancient caravans of the Silk Road once crossed these passes, leaving behind weathered shrines and stone markers. Qilian holds the atmosphere of a frontier, raw, open, and shifting between seasons faster than travelers can adapt. Mount Tai has been climbed for more than 3,000 years. Emperors ascended its stone steps for rituals that declared harmony between heaven and the human world. Standing at 1,500 meters, it may not be the tallest peak, but its influence is unmatched. More than 6,000 stone carvings line the path, and ancient temples perch on ledges overlooking the plains of Shandong. Sunrise from the south gate to heaven is said to bless anyone who witnesses it, a belief that sends pilgrims climbing through the night. Huangshan is a world of twisted pine trees, clinging to granite domes and peaks that thrust into a sea of clouds. Hot springs bubble near its base, while narrow stone stairs lead to viewpoints suspended above the mist. Some of its cliffs rise more than 1,800 meters, shaped by wind that sculpts the rock into surreal silhouettes. Artists have painted Huangshan for centuries because the mountain changes character with every shift of fog and light. It is a landscape that refuses to stay still. The glaciers of Jade Dragon once stretched far down the valley, but each decade, the white line retreats. The highest peak stands at more than 5,500 meters, wrapped in wind strong enough to keep climbers away. Below the ice lies Blue Moon Valley, where turquoise lakes reflect the mountain like a second sky. Yaks graze on alpine meadows, and Naxi legends say the range is the petrified form of a protective deity. Standing at the glacier's edge, you can see meltwater carving new channels, a reminder that even giants are fading. Kailash rises from the plateau with a symmetry that feels impossible. Its summit forms a perfect white pyramid, every ridge aligned with such precision that pilgrims long ago named it the axis of the world, the meeting point of heaven, earth, and the unseen. Four religions regard it as sacred: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Bon all believe the peak must remain untouched, and in more than 6,000 years of recorded history, no person has ever stood on its summit. Even Reinhold Messner, granted rare permission to climb Kailash, chose not to. Some mountains demand reverence, not conquest. Circling the base reveals a landscape shaped by forces as mysterious as the mountain itself. At the base of Kailash, 4 great rivers originate from the same plateau: the Indus, the Brahmaputra, the Karnali, and the Sutlej. They flow in 4 directions, like lines drawn from a central point. For scientists, this pattern is unusual. For believers, it is confirmation that Kailash anchors the world. On the southern face, horizontal rock bands stack so evenly they resemble carved steps rising toward the peak. Local legends describe an ancient kingdom that treated Kailash as its sacred tower. Pilgrims walk the Kora around the base, a 50-kilometer route that crosses high passes and winds through valleys where winds strike like unseen waves. Some prostrate themselves every few steps, a ritual that can stretch into weeks. They come because the journey itself is the offering. A quiet belief lingers in the region. Anyone who tries to climb Kailash would age in a single day. Myth or metaphor, the mountain enforces its own boundary. Storms gather without warning. Avalanches wipe clean any trace of ambition. Standing before Kailash, surrounded by prayer flags snapping in the cold, you understand. Here, the measure of courage is knowing where to stop. China's mountains are not just landscapes. They are archives of faith, danger, devotion, and deep time. Each peak we crossed held its own code, written in stone or ice or silence, waiting for anyone willing to look long enough. Some guarded ancient rituals. Some hid stories that refused to fade. Others reminded us how small we are beside forces that shape continents. If one of these places stayed with you, let me know which one and why. I'm always listening for the next trail worth decoding.